Hi everyone, it's Chris. Welcome back to the Vinyl Orchard. It's great to have you along. Thank you for popping by today. Now, recently I did a video on my favourite five Rainbow albums, album tracks and singles. And I thought today I would just do a little bit more on this particular band. Now, they produced 8 albums. And in each of the albums, there was a different lineup. So there's been a lot of musicians that have played for this band. So what I thought I'd do today is just share with you 10 musicians who played with Rainbow and some of my favourite songs from other work they did outside the band. Now, Rainbow were formed in '75. The last album that Richie Blackmore did prior to Deep Purple reforming in '85 was the 1974 album Stormbringer, an album he didn't like the direction of travel of. He referred to it as too funky and shoeshine music, and so he kept quite a lot of songs back ready for his solo project. Now in '74, on this particular tour, as on other tours as well, they toured with one particular band, and that band was Elf. And Elf had produced a couple of albums, Carolina Country Ball, Trying to Burn the Sun. And the members of this band, bar one player, the guitarist inevitably, would then form the first version of Rainbow. So Ronnie James Dio was the singer of Elf, or Ronnie Duo as he's called in this particular programme. But members of the band that would then join Richie Blackmore in forming Rainbow were Mickey Lee Saul, Gary Driscoll and Craig Gruber. Stephen Edwards, the guitarist, obviously didn't make it. So the first album came out in 1975. Love the cover of this album, gorgeous laminate sleeve. Basically Elf with Richie Blackmore. And it's not a bad album at all. The second album that Rainbow did had a different lineup. So gone were the members of Elf, bar Ronnie James Dio, and along came a couple of other musicians. So this album is seen as their classic. I certainly think it's their best, as I talked about on my last video. But this band has got Ronnie James Dio, obviously, and Richie Blackmore, but also Jimmy Bain on bass, Tony Carey, American keyboard player, and Cozy Powell. Now, I remember when I first heard that particular album, I was quite surprised that Cozy Powell was in the band, because I grew up in the kind of era of glam, and I thought Cozy Powell was a little bit of a novelty act, because I was aware of Dance with the Devil, a song that he played on Top of the Pops a couple of times, and was very much on the Rack label, very much part of the kind of almost glam scene. Great song, based on the Third Stone from the Sun by Jimi Hendrix. But obviously, Cozy Powell had been with a number of bands. He'd played with Bedlam. He'd played subsequently after playing with Rainbow. He played with Black Sabbath. He played with Michael Schenker. He played with Whitesnake. He even played with a version of ELP where the P was Powell rather than Palmer. Not particularly very good. He also did a number of solo albums as well. The first one he did, which was I think about 1980, was this one, called Over the Top. There's a few absolutely fantastic songs on here, including a song called Killer, which is great, features Gary Moore. He also did an album called Tilt, which came about a year after this, and another album in about '83 called Octopus, which was his nickname, I think, that David Coverdale had given him. But one song that I think from a previous band that I've always really loved, that I'm going to recommend for Cozy Powell, the first of the 10 musician recommendations, is from this album. This is the Jeff Beck Group. There's Cozy Powell in the middle there, looking very, very spookily like Jeff Beck, actually. But it's this good album, and lovely vocals on here for a guy called Bob Tench, really good vocals. But I love the song Situation. It's a really good song. Drumming is good, vocals are fantastic. It's a really good tune. So check out Situation by the Jeff Beck Group for a bit of Cozy Powell. So the bassist on Rising was a Scottish fella called Jimmy Bain. And Jimmy Bain was only on that Rising album. He went on to form a band called Wild Horses, which was with Brian Robertson, the departed Thin Lizzy guitarist. I remember seeing this lot in, I think it was Bournemouth Town Hall in about 1980. They were excellent, they were really good. But one thing that stands out on these albums is that Jimmy Bain, whilst he's probably a very good bass player, well, he is a very good bass player, was a very good bass player, he died about 10 years ago, is not a great singer. So the vocals on here aren't great, and I think that holds this band back. The material is okay, but the vocals certainly let it down. But for me, his best work outside of Rainbow was probably reserved for this album. I'm not a massive fan of this album, which is probably sacrilegious. This is Dio's Holy Diver, an album that Dio produced after he had left Black Sabbath. But you know, the song, the title track, Holy Diver, is fantastic. The bass work is very good. So he obviously reunited with Ronnie James Dio, Jimmy Bain, on Holy Diver. So my second recommendation is Jimmy Bain, Holy Diver. So they brought out the third album in '78. Cozy Powell was still a member, Richie Blackmore obviously, and Ronnie James Dio, but the keyboard player had then changed. So Tony Carey had left, and in came a guy called David Stone, who only stayed for one album, and a bloke called Bob Daisley. Now Bob Daisley has played with a number of bands over the years, Widowmaker, one of the early bands, but he's also on the single by Mungo Jerry, All Right, All Right, All Right, which I didn't realise until a little while ago. And of course he played on the debut album from Ozzy Osbourne, Blizzard of Oz. He plays on here, and I think famously was taken off the credits or re-recorded or something, him and Lee Kerslake, the drummer, and they just kept Randy Rhoads, and I think they substituted his work possibly by someone else. There was some kind of lawsuit, I think. But you know, this is a decent album. So my third pick for a Rainbow member is Bob Daisley and his work on Crazy Train, Blizzard of Oz, which still remains my favourite Ozzy song post-Sabbath. Now that was 1980 that came out, and Black Sabbath also brought out an album in 1980, a reinvented band where Ozzy had left to go solo, and in came Ronnie James Dio. He left Rainbow, and in 1980 he joined up with Sabbath. The first thing I heard by them was very un-Sabbath. It was Neon Nights. And great song. One of the things that's very different about Ronnie James Dio over Ozzy Osbourne sang to the riff, whereas Ronnie James Dio sings across the riff, and that's evident in this song here. Now, it went on to produce this album, Heaven and Hell, which I think is one of the best Sabbath albums. I think it's brilliant. It's not really very Sabbath in some ways, but it's brilliant. I saw them on a couple of tours with Ronnie James Dio. They were excellent, especially when they did their new material, the Dio era material rather than the older material. But my recommendation, I think this is number 4, Ronnie James Dio, comes from this album, the second album he did with Black Sabbath, Mob Rules, from 81, I think. But the song Falling Off the Edge of the World, I think is a superb song. Great vocals, brilliant band performance. I love Sign of the Southern Cross as well, actually. That's fantastic. But Falling Off the Edge of the World is my 4th recommendation, and that's Ronnie James Dio. So, the band started to kind of disintegrate round about this sort of time. Now, Ronnie James Dio did leave the band after Long Live Rock and Roll. He'd also done some other material previously, so he had been involved in this project, The Butterfly Ball, and that had produced a single that was actually quite successful in Europe, I think. It came out in, 74, I think. And it's called Love Is All. And the singer on there, obviously, is Ronnie James Dio. But the producer is Roger Glover. And Roger Glover obviously had played alongside Richie in Deep Purple, but then found himself on the 4th Rainbow album, which is called Down to Earth. So this came out in 79? Must have been 79 this came out. A new lineup of the band, which featured Roger Glover. Roger Glover had obviously been in Deep Purple. He'd been on In Rock. This is the German version of it. The cover is usually like that, but in Germany it looked like that, or certainly this edition. He'd done an album called Fireball, Machine Head, their classic, and Who Do We Think We Are, and then had been, left the band. He's obviously still in the band now, but he did a number of projects over the years as a producer, as a writer, and as a performer. Produced a couple of solo albums, and this album, Elements, which came out, I think, in 78. I think it was 78. I'm pretty sure it was the year before Down to Earth. It's a little bit of a fusiony kind of album. It's quite interesting, actually. And I really do like the first ring, Made of Clay, which is the opening song on it. There's only 4 songs on this. It's quite an interesting album. So that's my 5th pick from a member of Rainbow. Now, we mentioned Ozzy Osbourne, Blizzard of Oz, and at the start of one of the songs on that album, Mr. Crowley, is this extended keyboard introduction. Now, the person who plays that is not actually a member of the band, although he is credited on the album. and that guy's name is Don Airey. He plays the keyboard intro to Mr. Crowley. Now, Don Airey, now a member of Deep Purple, has played with loads of people over the years. I mean, incredible amount. One of the first times I heard him, saw his name, was when he appeared on these 3 albums, the 3 Colosseum 2 albums. The band that had born out of the ashes of Colosseum with John Heisman on drums, and joined by John Mole and Gary Moore and Don Airey, and there's some great stuff on it if you like jazz fusion. So the song I'm going to choose for Don Airey, which is what, the 5th or 6th person now, is the closing track from the 2nd Colosseum 2 album, Electric Savage, and it's called Intergalactic Strut. It's absolutely superb. The instrumentation there is brilliant. If you like fusion, amazing. Now, Down to Earth had a new vocalist because Ronnie James Dio had moved on. And that person was Graham Bonnet, a man who'd been in a band called the Marbles prior to that. This is Only One Woman on Polydor from '68. It's a Bee Gees song, on the same label as the Bee Gees, in fact. And after Rainbow, he had some success with a song called Night Games, which does feature Cozy Powell and John Lord, and I think Mickey Moody from Whitesnake. But for me, the greatest performance he gave vocally outside of Rainbow belongs on this album. It's the only album he did with Michael Schenker. It's called Assault Attack, and it's from 1982. They were going to tour, but something happened. I don't think they ever played a gig together, but the vocals on here are really good. He's very distinctive voice, Graham Bonnet. Fantastic voice, I think. And the song on here is called Desert Song. It's absolutely brilliant. It's got this wonderful build-up to it and a wonderful vocals and great guitar, inevitably, by Michael Schenker. So that's my recommendation for Graham Bonnet. Now, Graham Bonnet left and he was replaced by a guy called Joe Lynn Turner, an American singer. And the next 2 albums featured Joe Lynn Turner and a couple of new musicians. So the first one that came up was this one, which is called Difficult to Cure. And Cozy Powell had left, Bobby Rondinelli had come in, Don Airey was still in the band, Roger Glover was still in the band, Joe Lynn Turner now playing or now singing on that. And on this album, we see the back of Don Airey, and David Rosenthal appears, who I think now plays with Billy Joel. And is doing very well with him. But Joe Lynn Turner also sung not just on those 2 albums, but on this album as well, the final album that he performed. And they didn't produce another album until probably another 5, 6, 7 years after this, actually. This is a half-decent album. It's one of my favourite albums of probably my favourite album of the Joe Lynn Turner era. There's some good stuff on here. Now, Joe Lynn Turner, when he left Rainbow, also did some solo work. This is a decent album. This is quite AOR. It's called Rescue You. The song Endlessly is a good pick from that. But he's also done some other work as well. And one of the albums that he did do, if I can find it, is this one, which is Inge Malmsteen's Odyssey album, Rising Force, the band were called. Some people say this is the best album that Rainbow never recorded. Obviously, Malmsteen, although he plays too many notes, is very Blackmore influenced. He even plays the same kind of strat. And this is a really good album. The opening track, and my recommendation for a Joe Lynn Turner performance, is Rising Force. It's absolutely fantastic. It's a really, really good song. Now, on that Rescue You album from '85, there's a drummer on there that also played alongside Joe Lynn Turner on the Rainbow album. That's Chuck Burgie. And Chuck Burgie had played with a band called Balance. This is a decent album. It's quite AOR. It's quite soft rock, melodic rock stuff. But he was a good drummer. He was kind of had a jazz background. He replaced Steve Gadd in the touring band with Aldo Meola. He also played alongside or replaced Phil Collins in Brand X in about 78, 79 on this album, Masked. So he's a really good drummer and could probably cope with the improvisational nature of Richie Blackmore. So the song I'm choosing for Chuck Burgie is Deadly Nightshade. Absolutely fantastic jazz fusion song from that particular album. And that's 9 people, and there's obviously one left. And of course, that's Richie Blackmore himself. Now, he played with Glenda Collins and the Outlaws and Hines and lots of session stuff, Screaming Lord Sutch, prior to forming Deep Purple. but he made his name in Deep Purple and in Rainbow and didn't play outside of those bands very much. He obviously was part of the greatest live album ever recorded, made in Japan. It's just had a new reissue, which is okay. I still love the original the most. And he's played in very few other kind of bands other than Deep Purple and Rainbow. He does appear playing a fantastic solo right at the start on a song called "I Survived" by Adam Faith. It's kind of bizarre. It's like guitar solo at the start of that. But the 10th recommendation is, in fact, a song by that Richie Blackmore was involved with on a project he was involved with. I'm not sure when it was actually. Not sure. Early 70s, probably 71, 72. And the song I'm going to choose is from this album. This is a reissue of Green Bullfrog. I think the original is quite collectible. This is, I'm not sure whether this is, if it's an import or not. But anyway, it's got a number of really good players on it. Ian Pace, I think, is on here. John Lord is on here. But Richie Blackmore is on here. And you can tell it's him. So the song I would want you to listen to from here is called Bullfrog. And I don't think it's on Spotify. It's definitely on YouTube. It may be on Spotify. But if you just go in about 5 minutes, just listen to the solo on Bullfrog from the Green Bullfrog sessions. Fantastic Richie Blackmore. Absolutely incendiary solo on his Strat. Very distinctive sound. So there you go. 10 musicians, 10 recommendations. Tell me what you think in the comments below. And I'm sure I'll be back sometime with another video. Cheers.